Story number 1. Echoes in the Depths. It was the fall of 2011, a time that still haunts my every waking moment. I was 29, working as a night shift security guard at a secluded underground military base in a quiet U.S. suburb. The job was supposed to be straightforward: monitor surveillance, patrol occasionally, maintain the secrecy of the facility. But what unfolded in the bowels of that base was far from ordinary. My colleague was James, 28, with a background in the military. A no-nonsense guy, he had always dismissed the base's eerie legends as mere stories. That was until we were faced with the inexplicable. Our descent into this nightmare began with our security equipment. The cameras would glitch, showing corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. The radios would burst into life with static, occasionally whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere. The first incident that shook us to the core was in a restricted section of the base. We found an access door to a supposedly sealed-off area standing open. Inside, the air was unnaturally cold, and we could hear faint, distant sounds, like someone or something was moving in the shadows. But the event that haunts me the most happened while patrolling the lower levels. I felt a sudden drop in temperature. My breath fogged in the air, and I heard the faint sound of someone crying. Following the sound, I reached a section of the base long decommissioned. There, in the flickering light, stood a figure, a young woman, no older than 20, dressed in outdated military attire. She looked at me, eyes filled with an unspeakable sadness, and then vanished into thin air. I couldn't shake off the encounter. Digging into the archives, James and I discovered a series of unexplained incidents dating back decades, all linked to the section we had found open. Each incident was marked as classified and quickly hushed up. The turning point came when we captured a fleeting image on a surveillance camera. It was the same young woman I had seen, walking down a corridor before disappearing. We decided to investigate after hours, armed with cameras and a determination to uncover the truth. The atmosphere was oppressive, every sound amplified in the silence. Then, the unthinkable happened. We heard a low, mournful sobbing. Our cameras captured fleeting images, shadows moving just out of focus, faces twisted in agony. It felt like the air was thick with the presence of something ancient, something vengeful. Our findings led us to an old, sealed-off section of the base. Behind it, we discovered the remnants of an experiment gone horribly wrong. The victims were all young, their stories buried in time. Despite our efforts to bring these horrors to light, we were met with resistance and threats. Our evidence was confiscated, and we were reassigned. But the memories, the echoing cries, and the apparitions in that underground base continue to haunt me, a reminder of the unspeakable horrors that lurk in the forgotten depths. Story number 2. The Shadow of Subterranean Secrets. It was the year 2012, the year that remains vividly etched in my mind, marked by events that challenged the very fabric of my reality. At 30, I found myself working as a security guard on the night shift at a classified underground military base, hidden away in a suburban corner of the United States. The job, which I had expected to be routine and uneventful, quickly descended into a series of unexplainable and terrifying occurrences. My companion in this descent into the unknown was Emma, a 29-year-old with a background in law enforcement. Initially, we both dismissed the base's eerie atmosphere as a byproduct of its isolation and secrecy. However, our skepticism was soon replaced by dread. Our experience of the supernatural began with a series of technological anomalies. The surveillance monitors would flicker inexplicably, displaying fleeting images of corridors that seemed to defy the base's layout. Our radios, vital for communication in the sprawling underground complex, would emit bursts of static, occasionally interspersed with whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The first incident that sent shivers down our spines occurred in a long-abandoned wing of the base. Despite being sealed off, we found its entrance door inexplicably open. Inside, the temperature dropped inexplicably, and we heard what sounded like soft, distant weeping echoing through the empty halls. But it was an encounter during one of my patrols that truly shook me to my core. In the dim light of the subterranean passage, I saw a figure, a young soldier, his uniform out of date, his eyes filled with an eternal horror. He stared at me, and in a blink, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind a bone-chilling cold. Driven by a mix of fear and determination to uncover the truth, Emma and I began investigating the base's hidden depths. We were soon joined by Luke, a 26-year-old IT specialist who had discovered anomalies in the base's power grid. Night after night, we explored the underground labyrinth, documenting unexplained phenomena and searching for clues in old military archives. Our investigations revealed a chilling history of clandestine research. We uncovered files detailing experiments in psychological manipulation and paranormal research, projects shrouded in secrecy and abruptly terminated. The most disturbing discovery, however, was a series of journals from a researcher who worked at the base in the 1980s. His writings spoke of an experiment that had crossed boundaries it should not have, hinting at contact with entities beyond our understanding. Despite compiling a comprehensive dossier of our findings, our reports were dismissed by the base command. We were warned to cease our investigations, but the truth, we felt, needed to be exposed. We planned to leak our findings, but before we could act, the base was suddenly shut down, and we were reassigned. To this day, the memories of those nights spent in the bowels of the base, the unexplained shadows, and the haunting whispers linger with me. The events of 2012 serve as a harrowing reminder of the horrors that may lie hidden beneath the surface in the shadow of subterranean secrets. Story number 3. The Whispers Underground. The year 2013, a year etched in my memory with chilling clarity. I was then 30 years old, working the night shift as a security guard at an underground military base located in a seemingly tranquil suburb of the United States. What I experienced in the depths of that facility goes beyond the realm of normalcy and delves into the realm of the macabre. My fellow guard, Max, 29, was a skeptic by nature. He used to laugh off the base's haunting reputation as mere superstitions. But as events unfolded, even his skepticism was put to the test. Our ordeal began with minor, yet inexplicable, malfunctions in our surveillance equipment. Cameras would flicker sporadically, showing ghostly images of empty hallways, and our radios emitted an eerie static, occasionally broken by distant, unintelligible voices. The first incident that genuinely alarmed us was in a restricted wing of the base, long deemed off limits. We found the securely locked door ajar. Upon entering, we were greeted by a bone-chilling cold and the soft echo of sobbing from the depths of the corridor, though no one was there. But the encounter that haunts me most occurred one silent, pitch-black night. I was patrolling near the restricted area when I saw her, a young woman in dated military attire, her eyes wide with an unspeakable fear. She looked at me, uttered a silent plea, and vanished into thin air, leaving a coldness that sunk into my bones. Driven by a mixture of terror and curiosity, Max and I began to delve into the base's secrets. We were joined in our investigation by a young technician, Lily, 25, who had unearthed old, classified documents about the base's origins. Together, we embarked on nocturnal explorations, documenting unexplained disturbances and piecing together the base's hidden history. Our investigations revealed a dark past. We uncovered records of secret experiments that delved into psychological warfare and mind control. Our recording equipment captured chilling voices and unidentifiable sounds emanating from the walls of the restricted wing. Our most disturbing discovery was a diary belonging to a scientist who worked at the base in the 1970s. The diary detailed experiments on human subjects, with the final entries describing something they had awakened, an entity that defied understanding, an entity that brought only madness and despair. Despite our efforts to bring these horrors to light, our reports were dismissed, and we were warned to cease our investigations. We compiled our findings, determined to expose the truth, but before we could act, the base was abruptly decommissioned, and we were reassigned. To this day, the memories of those nights in the underground base, the echoing sobs, and the apparitions linger with me. The events of 2013 served as a harrowing reminder of the unseen horrors that may lie buried beneath the surface in the Whispers Underground. Story number 4. The Silent Echoes Below. The year 2014 remains a haunting chapter in my life, marked by events so unsettling that they defy logical explanation. I was 30 years old, working as a security guard during the night shift at a covert underground military base located in a suburban area of the United States. What seemed like a typical job guarding confidential information soon transformed into a journey through unexplained and terrifying phenomena. My shift partner was Hannah, a 28-year-old former police officer with a keen sense for detail. We were both initially dismissive of the rumors about the base's haunted past. However, our skepticism was soon to be challenged by the strange occurrences that unfolded. Our descent into the bizarre began with unexplained technical glitches. Security cameras would randomly show fleeting images of shadowy figures in restricted areas, and our walkie-talkies emitted a disturbing static, occasionally interspersed with faint, almost whisper-like sounds. The first unsettling incident occurred in a seldom-used wing of the base. One evening, we found the secure door to this wing inexplicably open. Venturing inside, we were met with a piercing cold and the distant sound of hushed voices, despite the wing being long abandoned. But the most chilling encounter was yet to come. One night, while patrolling near this wing, I saw a figure, a young woman in an old-fashioned military uniform, her eyes filled with a haunting mix of fear and sorrow. She seemed to reach out towards me before vanishing into thin air, leaving a lingering sense of despair. Driven by both fear and a need for answers, Hannah and I began an unofficial investigation. We were joined by Kyle, a 27-year-old tech specialist who had noticed anomalies in the base's power grid. Each night, we explored the underground labyrinth, recording unexplained noises and attempting to document our sightings. Our investigation uncovered disturbing secrets. We found archived reports of clandestine experiments dating back decades, detailing research into psychic phenomena and other fringe sciences. The most harrowing discovery, however, was a set of diaries from a scientist who worked at the base in the 1970s. His final entries were frantic and disjointed, describing an experiment that had gone terribly wrong, something they had awakened that should have remained undisturbed. Despite compiling a comprehensive report of our findings, our attempts to bring these issues to light were met with stern dismissal by the base's command. We were instructed to cease our investigation and remain silent about our discoveries. The base was shut down shortly thereafter, and we were reassigned under strict confidentiality agreements. But the memories of those haunting nights persist, a constant reminder of the unknown and inexplicable horrors lurking beneath the surface and the silent echoes below. Story number 5. Shadows of the Forgotten. The year 2015 remains etched in my psyche as a period of unrelenting terror and mystery. At the age of 30, I was a night shift security guard at an underground military base, hidden beneath the facade of an ordinary suburban landscape in the United States. The events of that year transformed what should have been a mundane job into a harrowing descent into the unknown. My partner in those seemingly endless nights was Eric, 28, a former infantryman whose skepticism about the supernatural was as solid as the concrete walls surrounding us. But as the events unfolded, even his stoicism was put to the test. Our descent into the inexplicable began with subtle, yet unnerving, malfunctions in our surveillance systems. Cameras would inexplicably flicker, momentarily revealing glimpses of dark figures in the labyrinth of corridors below. Our radios would crackle to life with an eerie static, occasionally broken by what sounded like hushed, desperate whispers. The first incident that truly shook us to our core was in the east wing of the base, a sector long decommissioned. One night, we found its security door mysteriously ajar. Venturing inside, we were met with an icy chill and a suffocating silence that seemed to hum with hidden secrets. But the most terrifying experience occurred during a routine patrol. In the depths of the base, I encountered a figure, a young soldier, his uniform dating back to an era long gone, his eyes wide with an expression of eternal dread. He stared at me for a moment before dissipating into the air, leaving behind a cold that seeped into my very bones. Compelled by a mix of terror and an urge to uncover the truth, Eric and I began an off-the-books investigation. We were soon joined by Julia, a 26-year-old communications officer who had stumbled upon strange discrepancies in the base's archival records. Night after night, we delved deeper into the base's past, unearthing secrets long buried. Our investigation revealed a history marred by forbidden experiments. We uncovered old documents detailing projects in mind control and psychic warfare, projects that had been abruptly terminated under mysterious circumstances. The most chilling discovery, however, was a set of personal journals from one of the base's original scientists. His final entries were frantic and disjointed, filled with warnings about a presence they had awakened during their experiments, a presence that now haunted the base's corridors. Despite our efforts to bring these findings to light, our reports were dismissed, and we were sternly warned to cease our investigation. We compiled our evidence, intending to expose the truth, but before we could act, the base was abruptly decommissioned, and we were reassigned. To this day, the memories of those nights spent in the eerie silence of the underground base, the fleeting shadows, and the haunting whispers linger with me. The events of 2015 serve as a harrowing reminder of the horrors that may lie beneath in the shadows of the forgotten. Story number 6. The Abyss Within. The year 2016 in my life is synonymous with fear and the unexplainable. At the age of 30, I worked as a night shift security guard at a clandestine underground military base located in the nondescript suburb of the United States. A job I had assumed would be uneventful quickly spiraled into a series of chilling encounters that questioned my understanding of reality. My partner in this descent into the paranormal was Claire, 27, a pragmatic and grounded individual who had always viewed the world through a lens of logic. But the things we witnessed in the bowels of that base would challenge even the staunchest skeptic. Our ordeal began with a series of technological malfunctions. Security cameras would intermittently fail, briefly displaying corridors that didn't align with the base's blueprints. Our communication radios would emit a low, disturbing static, sometimes giving way to faint voices, as though someone was attempting to speak through layers of earth and concrete. The first incident that deeply unnerved us took place in a restricted sector of the base. We discovered a sealed door standing wide open. Inside, the air was bitingly cold, and we could hear distant, melodic humming, though the chamber should have been deserted. But the incident that haunts me the most occurred during a routine patrol in the lower levels. I encountered a figure, a young man in archaic military attire, his eyes reflecting a depth of terror I had never seen before. He stared at me with an intense sorrow before vanishing into the darkness, leaving a palpable sense of despair in his wake. Compelled by fear and an innate desire for answers, Claire and I began investigating the history of the base. Our efforts were bolstered by Jake, a 26-year-old technician who had uncovered anomalies in archived records. Each night, armed with recording devices, we explored the labyrinthine base, uncovering its buried secrets. Our investigation revealed a history tainted with darkness. We found evidence of covert experiments dating back decades, experiments focused on psychological manipulation and extrasensory perception. The most harrowing discovery, however, was a series of journals from a scientist who had worked at the base in the 1970s. The entries described experiments that had crossed forbidden thresholds, hinting at contact with entities beyond our understanding, entities that, the scientist claimed, had never left the base. Despite gathering extensive evidence, our reports were dismissed by the base command, and we were warned to cease our investigations. We compiled our findings, intending to leak them to the public, but before we could, the base was abruptly decommissioned, and we were reassigned. To this day, the memories of those nights, the eerie apparitions, and the haunting sounds that echoed through the base's corridors linger with me. The events of 2016 served as a chilling reminder of the unseen, unspeakable horrors that may lurk in the depths of the unknown, in the abyss within. Story number 7. The Haunting of the Depths. In 2017, a year indelibly marked by fear and the inexplicable, I was working the night shift as a security guard at a concealed underground military base in the suburbs of the United States. At 30 years old, I was prepared for the solitude and the silence, but not for the nightmarish realities that lurked beneath the surface. My partner was a 28-year-old named Mark, an ex-Marine who had seen his fair share of combat. He was no stranger to fear, but the phenomena we experienced in the depths of that base were unlike any battlefield he had ever encountered. Our descent into the inexplicable began with minor, yet unsettling, technical glitches. Surveillance equipment would sporadically malfunction, showing fleeting glimpses of figures where there should have been none. Our radios would crackle with static, occasionally giving way to distant, indistinct whispers, as if someone was attempting to communicate from afar. The first incident that truly unnerved us occurred in one of the base's most secure sectors. We found a heavy steel door, always locked and monitored, inexplicably open. Inside, the air was freezing, and we could hear the faint sound of a child laughing, though the chamber had been long abandoned. But it was an encounter during a routine patrol that shook me to my core. I saw her, a young woman in an outdated military uniform, her eyes wide with an anguish that seemed to transcend time. She reached out to me, her mouth moving in silent desperation, before vanishing into thin air, leaving a cold void in her wake. Compelled by a mixture of dread and an unyielding need for answers, Mark and I started a covert investigation. We were joined by a young intelligence officer, Emily, 26, who had discovered discrepancies in the base's classified records. Night after night, we delved into the base's past, uncovering its buried secrets. Our investigation revealed a disturbing history of clandestine research. We found classified documents detailing experiments in psychological warfare and mind control, projects that had been abruptly terminated without explanation. The most chilling discovery was a series of journals from a scientist who worked at the base in the 1980s. His final entries were frantic, filled with warnings about an entity they had contacted during their experiments, an entity that now haunted the base's corridors. Despite our efforts to bring these findings to light, our reports were met with dismissal and threats. We compiled our evidence, planning to expose the dark truths of the base, but before we could act, the base was unexpectedly decommissioned, and we were reassigned under strict orders of silence. To this day, the memories of those nights, the ghostly apparitions, and the chilling laughter in the depths of the base haunt me. The events of 2017 serve as a haunting reminder of the horrors that can dwell in the shadows and the haunting of the depths. Story number 8. The Echoes of Subterranea. The year 2018 is engraved in my memory, a year that reshaped my understanding of reality. I was 30, tasked with the night shift security at a clandestine underground military base, nestled in the suburban sprawl of the United States. What I encountered in the depths of that facility was a journey into a chilling, otherworldly realm. My shift partner was Alice, 27, an ex-intelligence officer with a strong, analytical mind. We were both trained to face danger, but nothing in our careers had prepared us for the unexplainable events that unfolded in the underground labyrinth. Our descent into this nightmarish experience began with a series of bizarre technological failures. Surveillance systems would intermittently display fleeting images of shadowy figures in locked-off sections, and our communication devices would sporadically be filled with an eerie static, sometimes intermixed with faint, indiscernible whispers. The first incident that genuinely unsettled us was inside a sealed research wing of the base. One night, we found its reinforced door wide open. Inside, the temperature was inexplicably cold, and we could hear a distant, almost melodic hum, though the wing had been abandoned for years. But the encounter that haunts me the most occurred during a patrol near this wing. I saw a figure, a young, uniformed soldier with a look of eternal despair in his eyes. He appeared solid, yet ethereal. As I approached, he vanished, leaving behind a sensation of overwhelming sadness. Driven by a mix of fear and an insatiable need for answers, Alice and I began an off-the-record investigation. Our inquiries were aided by Dylan, a 26-year-old technician who had noticed strange power fluctuations in the base. Night after night, we delved deeper, recording unusual occurrences and piecing together the base's shadowed past. Our investigations unearthed disturbing revelations. We found decommissioned files on mind control experiments and research into paranormal phenomena, projects that had been abruptly and mysteriously terminated. The most chilling discovery was a series of journals from a scientist who worked on these projects in the 1980s. His final entries were frenzied and panicked, describing an experiment that had gone horrifically wrong, something they had unleashed that defied comprehension. Despite our efforts to compile these findings, our superiors dismissed our claims and sternly warned us to halt our inquiries. We clandestinely gathered our evidence, planning to bring it to light, but before we could act, the base was abruptly decommissioned, and we were reassigned under strict orders of silence. To this day, the memories of those haunting nights in the base, the ghostly figures, and the echoing, mournful hums linger with me. The events of 2018 serve as a stark reminder of the hidden horrors that may lie beneath in the echoes of Subterranea. Story number 9. The Shadows Beneath. The year 2019 remains etched in my mind as a time of profound terror and unexplainable events. At the age of 30, I was working as a night shift security guard at an underground military base, hidden within the quiet suburbs of the United States. What transpired in the depths of that facility was far beyond the scope of any ordinary assignment. My partner was Nathan, 29, a seasoned veteran of night shifts with a knack for rational explanations. We both initially regarded the base's rumored hauntings as nothing more than tales to spook new recruits. However, our skepticism was soon to be shattered. Our descent into a world of paranormal phenomena began with bizarre malfunctions in the base's advanced security systems. Monitors would occasionally flicker, revealing fleeting glimpses of figures roaming the deserted hallways. Our radios, crucial for communication in the labyrinthine corridors, would emit a low, haunting static, sometimes punctuated by distant whispers. The first incident that truly disturbed us occurred in one of the base's most secure research wings. We discovered the security door inexplicably open, leading into a hall that was shrouded in an eerie, unnatural coldness. A sense of dread permeated the air, and we could hear the faint sound of someone or something crying in the distance. But the most chilling encounter awaited me during a late-night patrol. In the dimly lit corridor of the research wing, I saw a figure, a young woman in an outdated military uniform, her eyes filled with an indescribable fear. She seemed to be trying to communicate before vanishing into thin air, leaving behind a bone-chilling cold. Compelled by a mixture of fear and a duty to uncover the truth, Nathan and I began to investigate the base's hidden past. We were joined by Rachel, a 25-year-old communications technician who had discovered anomalies in the base's archived records. Night after night, we delved deeper into the base's secrets, uncovering its buried history. Our investigation revealed a disturbing past. We found classified documents detailing experimental projects that had delved into psychic research and other unorthodox sciences. These projects had been abruptly terminated, with no official explanation. The most haunting discovery, however, was a series of audio recordings from a scientist who worked at the base in the 1990s. His final recordings were erratic and filled with terror, speaking of an entity they had encountered during their experiments, an entity that defied all understanding and brought only darkness. Despite our efforts to bring these findings to light, our reports were dismissed by the base's command. We were warned to cease our investigation and remain silent. We secretly compiled our evidence, hoping to find a way to expose the dark secrets beneath the base. The base was abruptly decommissioned shortly afterward, and we were reassigned. To this day, the memories of those haunting nights, the unexplained apparitions, and the echoing cries in the depths of the base continue to haunt me. The events of 2019 stand as a chilling reminder of the unspeakable horrors that may dwell in the shadows beneath. Story number 10. The Whispering Dark. The year 2020 was not just a year of global chaos, but also the year that plunged me into a world of unfathomable horror. I was 30, working the night shift as a security guard at a secretive underground military base in the suburbs of the United States. What began as a routine job soon spiraled into a series of events that defied all logic. My partner in those nightly vigils was Mia, 28, a tech-savvy ex-cyber analyst. Both of us were initially dismissive of the base's eerie legends. However, as the nights progressed, our disbelief was challenged by the terrifying reality beneath us. Our descent into this nightmarish experience began with strange technological malfunctions. The surveillance monitors would intermittently display shadowy figures in restricted areas, and our radios emitted a disturbing static, occasionally intermingled with faint, almost pleading voices. The first incident that deeply unnerved us occurred in an unused wing of the base. We found its steel door, always securely locked, inexplicably open. Inside, the air was bitingly cold, and the silence was punctuated by a soft, unexplained weeping that seemed to emanate from the walls. But it was an encounter in the lower levels of the base that shook me to my core. While patrolling, I saw a figure, a young soldier, his uniform from a bygone era, his eyes filled with a haunting blend of terror and sorrow. He appeared to mouth a warning before fading into the darkness, leaving a lingering sense of dread. Driven by a mixture of fear and determination, Mia and I began a clandestine investigation. Our explorations were aided by Connor, a 27-year-old communications expert who had noticed unusual signal disturbances within the base. Together, we traversed the underground maze, documenting unexplained phenomena and delving into the base's forbidden history. Our investigations unveiled a dark and hidden past. We uncovered classified files about psychological experiments and research into paranormal phenomena, projects that had been abruptly shut down under mysterious circumstances. The most disturbing discovery was a series of audio logs from a scientist who worked at the base in the 1990s. His final entries were frantic and disjointed, describing an encounter with an entity they had summoned during their experiments, an entity that now lurked in the shadows of the base. Despite our attempts to bring these findings to the authorities, our reports were dismissed, and we were reprimanded for breaching protocol. We compiled our evidence, planning to expose the dark secrets of the base, but before we could act, the base was decommissioned, and we were swiftly reassigned. To this day, the memories of those haunting nights, the ghostly sightings, and the echoing cries in the depths of the base haunt me. The events of 2020 serve as a grim reminder of the unspeakable horrors that may dwell in the shadows, in the whispering dark of the underground.